Kia ora i te iwi. So we're going to carry on and move right along to our next speaker. And so our next speaker goes by the name of Dr. Robert Pouwhare. Dr. Robert Pouwhare is a television director, producer, and app developer with 40 years of production experience in broadcasting. As an artist, he has exhibited paintings and a sculptural installation at the National Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa, and the Wellington Art Gallery. He has also composed music and is the lyricist for over 50 original songs aimed at kohanga reo, Māori language immersion preschools for children in a concentrated effort at language revitalisation. Ho mai te piki pakipaki e te whānau, Dr. Pouwhare. Kia ora e pā.
How's this? Yeah, just the green one. Kia ora tātou. Ko rangi nui ki runga ko papatu ānuku ki raro. Ko rātou ko wehesu ki te pō, whakauti atu. Ko tātou tēnei e pai nei. Kia koutou i te whenua tapu o Amerika ki te tonga. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou, te mihi au tā mātou tīpuna kia koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Marcos, obrigado, Janet, obrigado for introducing us to your people in Brazil and across Latin America, and of course Diana in Mexico. And for you who are watching this, bem-vindo, bem-vindo, welcome to our world. Here we are in this beautiful house with our ancestors suspended in wood, and all of our designs each tell a story and each means so much to all of us. I'm about to present to you the focus of my presentation is about one of the cosmologies, one of the ancient narratives. You won't see this, but behind the screen is a carving of Māui, which is the focus of my presentation today. Māui Tiki Tiki a Taranga. And he is at the bottom of this carving. But what you don't see, because it's covered by the screen, is that he metamorphoses, he morphs into a different shape, because he is intending to snatch immortality for all humans. And he changes his shape into a lizard. And in order to gain immortality, he has to enter the genitalia, the labia, the vagina of Hinenui Te Pō. And the carving behind the screen shows him as the lizard going up in between the legs of Hinenui Te Pō. Because his theory was that if he could reverse the birthing process, we can live forever, humans can live forever. But of course that didn't happen, but more on that in a moment. Firstly, secondly, I want to pay tribute to you, Welby. Ko koe te rangatira, you transformed this university and all of the scholars that have been under your tutelage have all proved to be amazing, amazing people, and that was all due to your skillful supervision at postgraduate level. And also in Latin America, please watch for his film called Punch. It is being released across America at this very moment, and I know he's going to be nominated for an Oscar. So, well, when I embarked on this journey with well-being, he challenged me to think about a methodological approach to unraveling my research. My research was about the second part of a series, a complex of narratives. In the Māori world, there are three sets of narratives. One is the story, the cosmology of the gods, Sky Father Ranginui, Earth Mother Papatuanuku, and their children who are all gods. That's the first set of narratives. The second set of narratives is about Māui Tikitiki Ataranga, and this is about the stories about this character, trickster, entrepreneur, challenger, this incredible character who challenges society, challenges authority, who transforms the world by being innovative and inquisitive. This is the focus of my question. The third set of narratives is about Tāwhaki, who falls in love with the celestial being Hāpai, and he embarks on this labyrinthine journey to seek knowledge, and he has to ascend to the heavens in order to gain knowledge, which tells our people that knowledge is precious, knowledge is important, and knowledge has to be acquired and protected. But so, in answer to Welby, rather than embarking on the traditional ways of approaching methodology, that is quantitative or qualitative methodology, I use an ancient concept of our people, and it is pūrākau, using the tree as a metaphor. But the pūrākau means pū means the roots of the tree, and rākau is the actual tree, but it is the ancient word for story, narrative, or the art of storytelling. And I've used that as the framework, the methodology for to describe the Māui narratives. It's the word is to describe a mythology, and I'm using mythology not as folktale, but claiming the real meaning of mythology as sacred text passed down from word of mouth to generations below. The pūrākau also contain karakia. Karakia are incantations. And so in the Māui narratives, I use some of Māui's karakia. Karakia also has sacred connotations. So in the retelling of the Māui stories, I deliberately include karakia. But in the Māui stories, we thought they were just kids' stories, folk tales, myths. But I soon discovered in the research that actually there was all about sex, murder, revenge, abortion, I mean, all of the huge questions that confront humanity, which were subsequently Welby introduced me to this really flash word called bowdlerisation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Hey, be here? How do you... Green one. Oh, green one. Oh. Now, practice-led research for us is really, really important, and I'm so glad Welby introduced us to this. because it suits Indigenous people and Indigenous scholarship in a way that has helped us to resist the hegemony of the academy, Western academy, because practice-led research allows us to reach deep into our own culture and discover our worlds, our truths, our wisdoms, and allow us to create stuff. You know, some of the scholars say that by creating stuff or making stuff, you are creating knowledge, because as you are creating it, you are engaging in being reflective also with the work that you produce. So this project on Maui forced me to produce and to create 14 different episodes of the Maui cycle, or the Maui complex of stories. And in doing so, we understand that Maui, the demigod, Maui Tiki Tiki Ātaranga, was the result of an abortion. So these stories aren't told to the kids, they are simply bowdlerized, as Welby kindly explained to me. All of the stories, the modern stories written by New Zealand authors, they have stripped away, one, karakia, which is the sacred parts of the stories, two, the sexual references, which were part of a very visceral part of the presentation by our people, our parents and grandparents. When we have wānanga or hui in a house like this, they told the entire story completely with all of the sexual parts revealed. As kids, we were exposed to this, but we didn't understand what they were talking about until we got a few furs around parts of our bodies. But practice-led research and is really, really important to us, and so happy that we were introduced to it. Now, these are the episodes of Maui. The first one is Te Whānautanga o Maui. That's the birth of Maui. And then he finds his mother. The third episode is he finds a new world. The fourth episode is he changes his shape. He's a shapeshifter. In order to access other dimensions of the world, he has to change his shape. So these ideas of shape-shifting are not new to us, or interdimensional travel are not new to us, because it was all outlined in these stories of Maui. And he finds his father. In episode 6, he is introduced to his ancestress, Muriranga Whenua, who gives him a magical bone in which he uses to tame the sun, for instance. He then is introduced at episode 7 to Mahuika, the goddess of fire, and he tricks her to give him the ability to make fire, for instance, energy. Maui at episode 8 is Te Kai Waihanga, the innovator, the creator. He invents stuff. This is talking about the character of this demigod Maui. At episode 9, he harnesses the sun, or to force it to move slower across the earth in order to give people time to grow their crops and cultivations and food. In episode 10, Te Ika Whenua a Maui, he challenges the authority of his older brothers And he goes with them. He sneaks onto the canoe to go fishing, and he uses his magic to fish up the great fish on which our land is, where we are. Te Ika a Māui is the North Island of New Zealand. Those people are called tapuika, the sacred fish. Tapuika a Māui tiki tiki a Taranga, that's their full name. The sacred fish of Māui, of the top knot of Taranga, his mother. She wrapped him in her top knot, and when she aborted him and floated him out to the sea. And it was the denizens of the deep that looked after him and nurtured him. Māui, at episode 11, Māui rauko tuna, Māui and tuna. Now this is the one about rape. Maui's wife goes swimming, and tuna, the eel, lies in the deep waters and sees her naked, and he lusts after her. And so that story is about the rape of Hina, the wife of Maui. But there, in the messages that are underlying, the encoded messages in these stories are that rape comes with consequences, and you have to be accountable. These are the big messages to our people that we predicate our whole behaviors upon these encoded knowledges that are embedded in these stories. Maui Rauko Irawaru, it's about the capricious nature of families and in-laws, and how difficult some families can be. And Niniwa Iterangi is the rainbow goddess of the heavens. And finally, Hinenui Te Pō. Hinenui Te Pō is Hine, the maiden of the great ancestress of Te Pō of the night. She has a particular story. I will get to that in a moment. Ai.
I te tīmatanga ko te kore. Ko te kore te whiwhia, ko te kore te rawea. Mai te kore ko te pō. Ko te pō nui, ko te pō roa, ko te pō uri uri. Ti hei mauri ora ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama. Ina, ko rangi nui, ko papatu ānuku. Tērā he wā, he mana atua tō te tangata. Ia rātau te mana mākutu, he mana panoni i o rātau hanga. He mana nui tō rātau. Engari te mutunga ka mate rātau. Ko te pātai no hea mai te mate. I tī mata te mate mai hea. Ko tēnei pūrākau, tawhito, he kōrero mō tētahi manu iti, tīrairaka, me tētahi tangata mana atua. Māui, ko te ngako o te pūrākau, ko te whai i te oranga tonutanga. Ko Māui, he tangata tinihanga, he tangata parapara, he tipua whakapātaritari. He haerenga nui tāku ki te kimi i tētahi tipuna, kei ia te mana o te ora. Mai kore ka taia e au ki te kapo i te oranga tonutanga, kia ora te tangata mo ake tonu. Kei hea te tipuna nei a hine nui te pō. He aha tōna āhua.
E tiraha ana ia I te ata o te rākau nui o te ora.
Haere, whakainihia o hoa, engari kia mārama. Kaua koe mo te hoi hoi, kaua mo te kōhimuhimu, kaua mo te katakata. Ka tae, ka whakaekea a hine nui te pō. Ka whakatatātu a Māui, kua taka ke a hine nui te pō ki te moe hohonu. Ka whakapiri atu a Māui. I reira, ka mahi mākutuia, ka panoni I tōna āhua hai mokomoko. Ka neke whakamokamoka atu ia, ka tata atu, ka hongi hongi. Ka hongi hongi te uhi ki wāinga nui I ngā kūhā o hine nui te pō. Ka hongi ki te taha matau, ka hongi ki te taha maui, ka hongi whakararo, ka hongi whakarunga. Mai kore ka kitea te puna o te kakara. Kei au te mana, tū mere a Māui. Kei au te mana. Kua keka hoki ngā mahara, kua rewha ngā whatu. Ka mātaki-taki a tīrairaka, ka pakaru mai te pukukata. Ka oho a hine nui te pō.
Ko wai tēnei nana kia, e whakaeke nei, e pāwhera nei, I te hōpua hohonu o te ora.
Ka titiro whakararo a hine nui te pō. E ko te fiore o mokomoko e tautau ana ki waho o ōna puapua. Ka kō penu penu hia, ka kō nati nati hia. Ka kotia a Māui kia mate. Ko te mutunga o te ora tēnei ki te tangata.
Ka oho te pō, ka rongo te pō. Ka oho te ao, ka rongo te ao. Ka oho ki tua, ka oho ki waho. Nau mai te mate, nau mai te pirau, nau mai te aitua.
Ko wai ka hua, ko wai ka tohu. Heiti te manu, he nui te kōrero.
Apologies for the cartoonish graphics. I did ask my colleagues, including Hine Matau, to model Hine Nui Te Pō, but they all declined because I really needed a live model, and I was going to go to K Road and buy one there, but I had to first ask my colleagues, and they politely declined. So bowdlerisation is the process of sanitizing these sacred texts from the rituals, and also sanitizing them so that they didn't it didn't include any sexual references. Okay, so there's that carving back there was a carving of Māui firmly, this is a carving of Hine Nui Te Pō, with Māui firmly with his head stuck up in her vagina. And this is the depiction of Māui. This is, I think it's a Te Arawa carving. And it's, excuse me, that was Te Arawa pre-colonization. So part of this quest is our concern for our language. Our language in the 1970s was identified as hugely endangered, teetering on the verge of extinction even. Socio-linguistic survey was undertaken by Richard Benton, and he identified that there were fewer people speaking the language and fewer pockets in tribal areas that were speaking it. We were fortunate in my country, in my land, Tūhoe, because we're up in the mountains and in the forest. The Pākehā, the white man, didn't want our lands. They wanted Hinematau's land. And because in my country, you have to be a goat to survive. So we actually ended up preserving our language. But when we got to university, we started to agitate for our language. And just last night, the Māori Language Commission gave us an award, not just for being old, but just because we started this movement 50 years ago, which forced the Crown, forced the government to include Māori language into schools to begin with. And then our group, Te Reo Māori Society, we weren't satisfied just with schools. We also targeted radio and television, and that was my introduction to television. It was all part of Te Reo Māori Society. We were like Al-Qaeda, I guess you would understand Al-Qaeda. It was highly militarized and, hugely active politically. And we targeted radio because at that time we had to pay the DJs on radio to say kia ora, $1 every time that they said it. And so we quickly got sick of that. And we decided, well, stuff paying them, we'll set up our own radio stations. And Al-Qaeda group here then forced me to apply to be a producer-director for television. And I trained in 1979 as a producer-director with the state system, with the secret agenda for setting up Māori television. But that took 44 years to realize. So last night was a recognition for, wasn't just I, it was a whole group of people that helped to realize this dream. And my inquiry is about, not just methodology, but concerns for the language. So, so kaupapa Māori drives this as a lens. And Cheryl Smith says, kaupapa Māori theory emerges out of practice, out of struggle, of resistance, out of experience of Māori who engage, struggle, who reject, who fight back, and who claim space for the legitimacy of Māori knowledge. And we've had to fight for this. The Academy wasn't that welcoming to begin with. We're so happy we've got people like Welby, Hinematau, in this institution who help us to achieve these things. Lee says pūrākau, which is this stuff that I'm talking about, is a traditional form of Māori narrative that contains philosophical thought, epistemological constructs, cultural codes, and worldviews that are fundamental to our identity. And I use this in exploring the narratives of Māui as well. Aye. So my pūrākau methodology uses the tree. The ancient word for story is pūrākau, and uses the tree as the framework. So in the roots, in the Mother Earth are the roots, and in order to grow and to flourish, the tree has to have a good root system. The tree is actually the work, the mahi that is to be achieved in exploring the research, and that's in the tree, in the boughs of the tree. But there's also in the root system, there's the spiritual, the unseen, the tacit knowing, te kurahuna. And in terms of the methodology, so I've used kaupapa Māori as the paradigm, and the methods I've used are karakia, which are the incantations, the prayers, whakapapa, which are the interconnected layers of people, and I've used archival research as well. Kōrero awaha, which is discourse. Kōrero apukapuka, which is looking at the literature and at the ancient manuscripts. Waiata looking at the different types of knowledges that are contained in waiata. Waiata are all sung poetry, and in those waiata are classical allusions. Some of them are too ancient for us to understand their meaning, but they do convey a whole lot of meaning. And in these waiata are references to Māui, and in one waiata talks about the hiku reka reka, or tuna, meaning the orgasm that he has when he rapes hina. And it's the te hiku reka reka means the orgasm of the tail of tuna as he ejaculates into hina. See how graphic this stuff is. This is not meant to be XXX videos, okay? But these are some of the methods that I've used. Mahi Auaha is working, creating the artifact, and Mahi Ohu is collaborating with other specialists to achieve the videos, for instance, the final creative output. Relational charting, soundscaping, immersion, and also peer review. That's the Pūrākau framework. These are some of the sanitized and bowdlerised versions of Māui in the early literature written by many, many Pākehā authors. And even in the last century, they've shied away from actually naming Papatuanuku's vagina. They couldn't use the V word. They actually, one author described as pudenda muliebrium, or something like this. It was all in Latin to disguise the word vagina. They couldn't quite bring themselves to say it. So, this incredible character Māui teaches us so much. These stories, as I said, have these encoded knowledges embedded to teach us. The last episode is about Hine Nui Te Pō. Now, the story of Hine Nui Te Pō was that she is, when Tāne, the god, came onto this, separated the Sky Father and the Earth Mother, he then went around to create the trees and the forests and everything that lived within the forest. So the trees are our older cousins. And finally, he got, and that is all about whakapapa. He procreated with this tree and out came this shrub. He procreated with this flax and out came this weed. And he, in the end, he got a bit sick of, rooting around with the trees. So he asked his mother, where can I find the female essence? And she said, haere ki kurawaka, kai reira, te rongoa. Go to the sacred beach at Kurawaka. You will find the solution there. He gets there, and then he was told to shape up this form, and it emerges. It's hine nui, hine. He looks at this shape and says, "Oh, this looks quite nice." It was, and it was this shape of a female, But he didn't quite know what to do. According to our people, he then had to experiment. He got his taiaha, which was erect, and he put it into her eye. It was quite the wrong place, but when he withdrew, he left sleep in the eyes. Then he put it into her ear, and he withdrew and left wax there. Wasn't quite the right place. Then he put it in her nostril. No, that wasn't the right place, and he pulled out and left mucus and snot. Then he put it into her mouth. Oh, not too bad, it was quite good. But then when he withdrew, he left mucus. Then he put it into her armpit, and it was just flapping away like that, and so nothing happened. Then he pushed her breasts together and slapped it into her breasts, and that didn't go anywhere. So then he looked down, and he turned her around, and he put it into the back door. And of course, we all know what happened. What was left there. And then he turned her around and then put it in. Kapow was the big bang, right? And the first human for Māori is this goddess called Hine Ahuone. She was the first human for Māori. Hine Ahuone, the maiden formed from earth, from sand. But he then cohabits with Hine Ahuone. They have a daughter, Hine Titama. And Hine Titama then becomes the lover of Tane, the god. And then when she asks, where is my father? They said, go and talk to the carvings in the house and they will tell you. And they whispered to her that her father was in fact her lover. Out of shame, she fled to the underworld and she became Hine Nui Te Po. And the encoded message for Māori society, for us, is that incest is forbidden, prohibited, highly frowned upon, in fact, punished by death in some societies. So these stories mean everything, and Maui is just a key to one of these stories. So thank you very much, obrigado, and ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa.
Always a smile. I'm always left with a smile listening to you, koro, pa. But I have I just want to read out this one message here and talk about this question, which is also from Brazil, and says, Dr. Robert Pouwhare, your presentation is one of the most powerful and inspiring that I've watched in Link this year. I'm a professor of Portuguese language in a small school in a countryside of Brazil. I followed Link for the last 3 years. I watched Marcos's presentation yesterday, and I took note of your name when he presented you as one of the most important Māori language revitalisation people in Aotearoa. I would like to congratulate you and your team with a hug from my small city. Oh, there's your hug. The community that I work for is poor, and I work with even poor Indigenous tribes, where only the elders speak their original language. Young people are not interested. They only like their mobiles. I believe language encapsulates culture and life. As someone who worked with language revitalisation, how do you suggest to create the understanding for young Indigenous people to learn their language?
It's a very, very good question. It's one that we grapple with all the time. Firstly, tell them don't eat McDonald's, otherwise they'll end up like Donald Trump. And the best thing is that you have a new president in Brazil, and I know he's a person of the people. It was always difficult for us fighting against the hegemony of the media. We knew that television was powerful, but now as time is turning. We now realize there are emerging technologies, emerging algorithms and all of this stuff. And people, and our young kids are getting up to speed. You heard from Jani how our young people are involved in kapahaka, song and performance and dance. It's a big thing for us as Māori, because we come from an oral culture, so singing, creating is really, really important, and that ties the young kids to our culture. We always have to be vigilant. We create stuff on television specifically for our kids, language revitalization, or trying to hook them into programs that might interest them. It's a never-ending battle. We have come out of the phase of being endangered language, but we are not safe. We are still not safe. We have to keep vigilance on language erosion. But at least it's a lot better than what it was, 50 years ago? 50 years ago, God. Sorry, but you have to create all sorts of strategies to get them interested in your language, in your culture, and in your dreams. You have to create hope and understand that the ancestors have huge knowledge, and it's wonderful to discover and rediscover that.
Thank you, Rob. O mai te piki e te iwi, kia ora. Thank you very much. Ai e te. I'm just sitting there very inspired e te iwi, and I'm sure you all are, and amazing questions coming from Brazil. You truly are keeping us thinking about that, so tēnā koutou.